This is the first video of 2024 that I've made, and I wanted to do a little bit of a catch-up chat, really, picking up on what I've been thinking about and reading. You know, when you get these synchronicities happen, that something you've been thinking about or reading about suddenly appears, the same theme appears on your YouTube, homepage, the algorithm feeds you something and you think, that's interesting. Well, that happened for me just yesterday, actually. And it was a video by someone that I used to follow. And occasionally I'll dip in and out just to see what it is they're saying. And this particular thumbnail caught my attention because it was about the blood, about bloodline. And I have been thinking about that a lot lately. But I'm not talking about that particularly today. I am going to be talking about angels and fallen angels, the Watchers and the Nephilim. Now, this person was mentioning the Nephilim in relation to what they were saying, but they did admit, in fairness, that they didn't really know about them and that they hadn't read the Bible, hadn't looked at the Bible to see where it mentions them. They hadn't really done any research, any scholarly research about it. But they were nevertheless making a video, and they were actually channeling their own blood. It was largely intuitive and using cards and so on. The thing that struck me was that the conclusion that they came to was the wrong end of the stick, if you like. That, you know, it was completely wrong. So this teaching was put out along this theme that was misguided. So what I'm doing today is I'm making the video that I was going to be making anyway, and I am mentioning that. I suppose if I'm honest, it does sort of, I do get a little bit on my soapbox because we're asked, aren't we, to question things and to not just go along with what we hear and what's popular, but to really do our research and our study. So there is a little part of me that, finds it frustrating when I see spiritual teachers putting out stuff that's just not sound teaching, and calling themselves spiritual teachers, and it's not scholarly, and it's not the right theology. So we are going to look at the theology of the Nephilim and the Watchers in this video, and look at that in relation to what it means to be a light being. So to begin, I need to sort of backtrack a little bit. If you haven't watched the videos already that I've made on the Elohim, I will link them so that you can. It's important to just say that both angels and humans were created with free will, and they're actually very similar. So the Bible says that people, human beings, were created just a little lower than the angels, all right? And if you look at the Kabbalah tradition, the Jewish mystic tradition, they talk about everything being fractals of light. The creation is like fractals of light that started as a whole with source and then expressed itself because it wanted to experience, and it was scattered. So these fractals of light are scattered in the souls of all beings, all creatures in the creation. And the redemption plan is about gathering back in all the sparks of light. Now, in the biblical narrative, whether or not you believe the Bible, the Bible is a myth, and the biblical stories are myths, in the sense that they are stories about God or the gods. That's really what the classification is for a myth. So to really understand the Bible, firstly, we need to accept that it's that type of genre of writing. Secondly, we need to understand it in its context. And that means that you look at the time that it was written, historically you think about what was happening at the times, the wars, the different nations that were around, the areas where they were written, and the different cultures that were close by, because there's a lot of cross-fertilization from other ancient cultures. You also try to get into the mind of the people who were the original audience, so the Israelites. And that's really how you understand something in context. So the first thing to say is that there is this divine counsel. Yahweh, who is God, who we think of as God in the Christian tradition, the Judeo-Christian tradition, was one of the Elohim. And an Elohim really is a spiritual being. It's a God with a small g. Okay, it's someone who inhabits the spiritual realm. And God has his counsel. Yahweh has his counsel. And his counsel are these other sons of God. Now, some of these sons of God remain faithful to Yahweh and his team and his mission, which is to restore the fall and reverse it. And some of them didn't. Some of them rebelled. And they looked down at all the scattered nations and thought, well, you know, I'd like a bit of that real estate for myself, you know, and spiritually I'd like a little bit of power and control over the nations. And for their rebellion, they were chucked out, I suppose. They were excluded and cast down into a place called Tartarus. Now, this is not in the Bible, but it's referred to in the Bible. So I think there are passages in Jude, if I remember, and First Peter, letter of First Peter, I think, this is all from memory, in the New Testament that make reference to stories that, as modern readers of the Bible alone, we're not familiar with. So there are certain passages in the Bible that would be confusing if you only ever read the Bible. And herein is where the problem lies. If you're trying to be a good Christian and only read what the church tells you should be reading, only the books that got into canon, then there are large parts of it that are just inexplainable. And you just, very often, people just overlook them or find a convenient explanation for them that's really just like a modern perspective that we're projecting back in time onto it. If you do look at the writings that were around at the time or written at the same time, they'll help you to understand these references. And one such book, writings, was the Book of Enoch. Now, there are two books of Enoch. And we're talking about the first book of Enoch, and I forget the exact reference point. 1 Enoch 6 to 15, and it describes the Watchers, Watchers with a capital W. And these were the angels that were in rebellion, that were cast out. God consigns the archangel Raphael to take them away, to send them down and lock them up to a place called Tartarus. Tartarus is often translated as hell or Sheol, but it literally means a dark abode of woe, a dark place of woe. So I think of these, it's not that they're literal places, it's that they're vibrational regions. You know, like if you're in very low energy, if you're in a place of anguish and you just can't see any hope or light, if a place of despair, all right, really down in the pit, that's where they were consigned. And they were imprisoned there, bound up. It's important that they were bound. In other words, it was to contain them so they couldn't get out and they couldn't wreak damage and they couldn't influence other people. And you know, and plan Yahweh was really to restore Eden. We mentioned the Eden, and I say that we mentioned it. I will, as I say, put the playlist at the end because there are other videos where I've spoken about this before. Was not the entire earth, but it was a place where humans and God lived together. So Yahweh walked in Eden with Adam and Eve, which was unheard of because in the ancient world the gods were remote and far off. Anyway, that all sort of fell apart when Adam and Eve chose to use their free will in disobedience. And you had the angels also, that just some of the angels, I forget, I think it was a third, if I'm right, 33.3 percentage of them that fell, according to the scriptures. And they went down into the lower regions. So they are still light beings. This is quite significant, because they don't stop being light beings because they were in rebellion, because it's how they were created. It's like the people on earth who are in rebellion, the people who are the baddies, they are still ensouled, they're souls, and the soul is a fraction of light, right? Because we have this freedom of will to use our choices, our lives for good or for evil. And it's the same exactly with the angels. Now, in the Enochian story, Enoch goes down into Tartarus because they call on him. They ask him and appeal to him to be like an ambassador for them, to intercede on his behalf and to ask Yahweh, please let us out of here, please let us back into heaven, we're really sorry. And so Enoch goes back to Yahweh and pleads for them, and Yahweh says, no, you're there till the end of time, the end of days. In other words, I'm not letting you out because you can't be trusted, because you're traitors. And one of these that's down in the I can't remember the names of them all. They're listed in the book of Enoch, I believe. But one of them is Azazel. Let me just think, see if I've got that right. Azazel. And Raphael, Archangel Raphael, who's one of the faithful, was asked to bind Azazel in chains and to bury him. Okay, because he was a dangerous one. He was the one that went down to earth, and his forte was perfecting the art and teaching everyone else how to dig up metal and to fashion weapons. So he's known as the angel of war. Now you might say that didn't work very well, because, look at the state of the world today and the war, all the wars that are going on in the world. There are people who would say that this world is like a prison, and we're kind of living in this hell, and we are influenced by these fallen angels all the time, because this is their arena, if you like. If you remember the Pistis Sophia, I did a video on this Pistis Sophia. Again, I'll link that at the end. And the story of Pistis Sophia is that there are archons who rule over the different Aeons. I think there are 13 Aeons. And Sophia falls to the lowest point, and she's trying to work her way back up through the Aeons. But these archons, these angels, these fallen angels and powerful spiritual beings that rule, the rulers of this dark age that Paul talks about, they take all her energy, they allure her, she gets drawn in by them. And they are very convincing, these angels. The Bible talks about false teachers masquerading as angels of light, and their stories are very appealing. And so they end up controlling people unbeknown to them that they're actually traitors. It's a bit like the program Traitors. I don't know if you watch it. You've been watching it. There's just a new series started here in the UK. We've been watching it, and I think they have it in the US as well, isn't it? And it's so frustrating at the moment, because of course we're able to know who are the traitors and who are the faithful, but the people that are in the game don't know, and their task is to be able to identify them. And they keep voting off the faithful, and then they'll regroup and sit around. They'll be sitting saying, oh God, what shall we do next? What do you think it might be, and what shall we do now? And they're sat next to a traitor and they have no idea, because they've been completely convinced, because this is a popular person whom we like. It can't possibly be somebody who isn't, who has their own agenda and is out for their own ends alone. They're not a team player. And this is exactly the same with the fallen angels. Now, I am actually going to read to you from the Bible, from Genesis 6, where it mentions the Nephilim. And you have the angels, the sons of God, looking down on the earth, and some of them were thinking, well, I'd like some of that for myself. And they decide that they're going to mate with humans. So when men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful. Now, the sons of God here refers to the divine council, the Elohim. Okay? So these are spiritual beings in heavenly realms. And they married any of them they chose. So they mated, and this was where you get what this person I was talking to you about was talking about, these hybrid humans who had the seed of angels in them, and how the story is that the human race still has that angelic seed. And this person was saying it as though it was a good thing, you see. Mentions also the Nephilim here. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children with them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. And those were the Watchers. In other literature they're called the Watchers. Now the thing about Nephilim, Neph comes from the word to fall. It's a verb, to fall, meaning that the deserters or the fallen ones, they weren't working on Team Yahweh. They weren't working to restore the world to the pre-Eden state. So you don't want to be claiming that you are a descendant of the Nephilim. It's not something to be proud of. You don't want to say, I've got that genetic kind of inheritance in my DNA or in my blood, because it's not good. Okay, you're actually saying that you're one of the traitors. Now you might be thinking, well, I speak to angels. How do I know that the angels aren't masquerading as angels of light, but they're really the fallen ones? They're really traitors. To be fair, the angels who are mentioned by name in the book of Enoch, I didn't recognize any of their names. I'm not going to mention their names or read their names out to give them any power at all and recognition. And you wouldn't know those names unless you were someone who was working with the dark arts. There is definitely power in the names and the angels. They are powerful light beings. And you can manipulate events, manipulate the material world by use of practices and rituals that call upon their power. If you were to do that, you would be entering into a contract whereby you're giving your power away. You're entering a deal with the devil, a pact with, in a way you are, because you're going to be limited to the ceiling that they're limited to. And this is a vibrational level at which they operate, and you're going to be wanting something more. And I do think there are a lot of people at the moment that are really hungry for something more edifying. It's not just all about wanting to use the law of attraction and to get money and get rich quick and find your soulmate and your twin flame and all of those things. This is what perhaps starts us off on the path, because we want to find happiness and fulfillment in life. But we soon find that if we're only going after the material gain, including success in the world's eyes, then it doesn't satisfy us at a deep level. And look at the teachers that teach all this stuff. Look at their calibre, or the quality of their character and their own lives. Are they people who exude peace and love and joy? Or are they people that are a little bit egocentric, taking the glory, absorbing the glory, and making it all about themselves, as opposed to reflecting the glory? Are they giving us substance? Are they giving us teaching that's edifying? Are they people that increasingly display manic behaviour because they're quite dysfunctional themselves? Well, that's not somebody that I would trust or want to follow and emulate. So I suppose the way that you can guarantee that you're on the right path and you're going to get the good teaching is to align yourself with people who are choosing the higher light, people who choose Christ, who are choosing it not just by the words that they use, but by their example and the fruits of what they're producing. Placing Christ on the throne of your heart. And with regard to the blood, by the way, you don't have to worry about what your blood group is or about what you've inherited from your family or your ancestral line in terms of diseases or character traits, or indeed what you might have heard someone tell you that you might have inherited in a sort of, angelic hybrid DNA in your blood. Because that would imply that we are trapped by our bodies. And that means we don't really have freedom, do we? It means that we're simply the product of our biology or the history of the planet. And then there is no hope. We can never break free of that. Well, there is hope. The truth is, if we really look at the biblical theology and we really understand it, there is something that trumps the bloodline that you've inherited, the earthly body bloodline, and you can be free of that, and you can be a part of the heavenly family, including your very bloodline that you inherit, because you become a new creation. So much really good teaching is there if we discern, if we have a discerning eye, and we're careful about what we read and listen to. There is good news, but we have to really mind for it and be willing to put the work in of studying the scholarship, because the truth sets you free. It really does. And I can't wait to share with you. In a future video I will talk more about the bloodline and about what it means to be a new creation, and about being a member of the family of God, and what it means to be in Christ, because herein lies our salvation, our freedom from this, if you want to say, this patterning of the matrix, the arena of the fallen angels. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Thank you for joining me today. Do let me know in the comments your thoughts on all of this, and I'll see you again very soon. All my love. Bye for now. I'm married to somebody actually with rhesus negative blood, so I don't think they're an ancestor of the Nephilim. I might be wrong.